Welcome to this first in a series of short videos designed to prepare students for the TEAS test, the standardized test that many of our nursing and healthcare students have to take in order to continue their career in that field. So this first video, I want to cover the topic of the scientific method and reasoning that's associated with it. The scientific method itself is actually a subset of critical thinking. Critical thinking, I've seen many different definitions of critical thinking, but this is one of the best ones I've found. The process of analyzing available facts, evidence, and observations, and even arguments layered on top of that evidence to draw a certain conclusion. And what you want to do as a critical thinker is to ask yourself questions about the conclusions. I mean, the facts may be correct. They're not always correct. When someone is trying to convince you of their position, even the facts may be wrong. So you have to correct the facts. And the best place to go for facts and evidence is primary sources. But once that's been verified, or you can make your own observations. That's also possible. Then you have to investigate the arguments that are being made based upon those facts and observations and see if they make sense. You look for underlying assumptions, right? Many arguments assume certain facts without proving them. And sometimes that's okay, right? If it's a well-established set of facts, observations that have been proven many times, then we can work from that point. But some assumptions are never proven. And if those assumptions become a hindrance to the argument, then you need to be able to detect those problems. So the end goal of critical thinking is to form a judgment through your personal application of rational, often skeptical, and unbiased analysis and evaluations of the facts to see if you come to the same conclusions as those who are trying to convince you of their position. So, like I said before, the scientific method is a subcategory of critical thinking. It has a special approach to how we handle observations, evidence, and what you'll come to know as experimentation. So, science itself, upon which the method, the science relies upon the scientific method to advance the accumulation of knowledge and the organizing of knowledge. So that's what science is. Science is essentially a plan of action, and it's very malleable. It has to be, so that depending on the area of research, it can be adapted to accomplish the same goals, but with the available techniques, the available instrumentation, and the variability in the questions that are being asked and we need to answer. Here's one expression that you may hear very often, especially in the popular media. It's called settled science. It was used extensively to promote the global climate change, the man-caused global climate change, was presented to the world as settled science. And I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing. Settled science is a lie. Science itself is continual. It is an approach that allows for questioning and hopefully, over time, constant improvement of our understanding of the natural world. And claiming that it's settled science does not promote that idea. So scientists are always challenging our current beliefs. They're asking questions. They're conducting experiments to gain new knowledge. And if you are in doubt of that, then you've got no business being in the sciences or trying to exercise scientific method, which I'm about to describe. Okay, there are some fundamental steps that are characteristic of the scientific method. And we have to actually, we all agree as scientists that this process lies at the center of the inquiry. Usually we start with an observation. That is, we see something, we notice something in the natural world, and it sparks a question. We want to know more about it. We want to know how it happens, or in some cases, why it happens. And the first thing we do is we propose a statement that encompasses our observation and makes sense of it. So if I observe the sky is blue, and I hypothesize that the sky is blue as a result of light scattering in the upper atmosphere. If I say that, then I'm hypothesizing that that's the reason for the blue sky. And then I have to devise an experiment to either prove or disprove. Now, if my experiment comes up with a different conclusion, saying the sky is not blue because of that, my experiment doesn't confirm that, then I go back and modify my hypothesis and try another experiment. So negative results from experiment are not bad. You know, we're not talking good or bad, we're talking valid and invalid. So I can go through this procedure many times over, modifying my hypothesis, or I can repeat the experiment several times just to be sure that the results are confirming what I think is happening. That's called replication. And then over a period of time, usually, sometimes many, many years, the results of these experiments present us with a reasonable estimation of what happens every time I do this. This happens, and that, in scientific terms, is called a law. Let me go to the next slide. I think I've got yeah. It's simply a summary of repeatable observed behaviors. For example, I like to use Newton's laws of motion. Newton's first law of motion says that anything in motion tends to remain in motion in a straight line unless it's acted upon by an external force. Or anything at rest tends to remain at rest unless it's acted upon by an external force. That's just a simple statement of behavior. What happens under those conditions? That's known as a law. All right, let me go back. So we accumulate these laws describing behaviors in the natural world, And every so often, um, a scientist comes along and synthesizes those laws into what we call a theory. And when we say theory, it's a step above laws in that it tries to explain why something happens. So if we can explain why things remain at rest or remain in motion, then we're talking about a theory. And those don't happen very often. But when they do, it's a game changer. Because one advantage to a theory is its ability to predict outcomes if we actually change conditions. A law, if you change conditions, then the law becomes inoperative. But if you change conditions in a theory, then you're able to conduct an experiment to see what those predictions, the outcome from those predictions, uh, will will result. And we go through the same cycle. We apply the theory. We propose a hypothesis under the umbrella of the theory, and we experiment. And we do that over and over until the theory is well established. Uh, Now, I'm going to mention something in a few minutes about what happens to a theory when it goes wrong. Um, what we usually also include in a theory is called a model. A model, um, it could be as simple as a physical model. Like we could put atoms together into a molecular structure, and that would be a model of our atom. But some models are mathematical. They only exist in a computer. But they're models nonetheless. And the advantage of a model is we can change that model. Like if I had a model airplane with a certain wing configuration, and I wanted to see what happens to that model if I change the wings and I slap different wings on it and try to fly it, right? Then I can see what happens. I've changed the model and predicted an outcome, and then I experiment to see what the outcome will be. Okay, that was a law. So what's missing in a law is why. Laws do not explain why things happen. A hypothesis is simply an explanation of an observation, and it must be testable. A hypothesis must be, you must be able to uh, disprove it. You have to be able to disprove a model. Excuse me, a hypothesis. Pardon me. Then we come to the theory, and it's often a set of hypotheses. We have multiple hypotheses which reflect those changes in prediction that we have made with this theory. And it does try to explain why. Now, we don't have time to introduce various types of uh, theories, um, but, and I don't want to keep this, I don't want to be too long with this video. So I mentioned what happens when the model goes, the theory fails. Well, we have three options, and I'll try to be quick. Three options. When a theory fails, we have one option is to restrict. Just restrict its application. So outside these parameters, we don't use it, right? And um, Newtonian physics is a good example. If things get really, really, really small, like the size of an atom, then we can't use it. If they get really, really big, like the size of a black hole, we can't use Newtonian physics. So we restrict its use, or we modify it. And that's what many scientists do. Scientists have lots of time and energy and even spiritual investment in their theories, and they don't want to let them go. So they try to modify them to account for these discrepancies, and very often it works. The other option you can do is scrap it. scrap the model, scrap the theory, start over. And I could give you examples, but like I said, I don't want to take up all your time. The last possibility is, and you won't see this very in any textbooks, you turn it into a religion. That's not science. If you turn your theory into a religion, then you're no longer in the realm of science by its exclusion, right? Religion excludes the scientific method. And that's what's happened with a couple of notable theories. The caused climate change has been turned into a religion, and Darwinism, right? Like I descended from monkeys, that type of thing. Turn it into a religion. Okay, so now for reasoning, for problem solving. Whenever you're confronted with a problem, and this, since we're talking about the TEAS test, this problem that you're trying to solve is going to be in the form of a word problem, usually. Word problems have one characteristic in common. They are designed to confuse. And the reason for that is a confused reader of the problem is the one who doesn't have sufficient command of the subject matter to solve the problem. And that weeds them out. They'll miss the problem because they don't understand the underlying concepts that are required to solve the problem. Right? That's why word problems are structured the way they are. So the first thing you want to do when you're trying to solve a problem is ask yourself, what is the question? There's always a question. It may be in the middle, maybe at the end, it could be at the beginning, but find the question that the problem is asking for. Then you can formulate a strategy to answer the question. And that will depend on what type of question it is. Right? Does it have something to do with human anatomy and homeostasis? Does it have something to do with chemistry and an algebraic solution to a chemistry problem? Then you gather the information that you need to solve the problem. Sometimes it's buried in the problem, the word problem itself. Sometimes you have to go external. Right? You may have to use, say, a periodic table to get information to solve the problem. And lastly, some problems are very simple, one-step solutions, and the solution is obvious. Other problems are more complex, and the only way to solve them is to break them into smaller, manageable pieces, and then resynthesize the answers for the pieces together to get the final answer. Okay. So that's the end of our first video on scientific method and reasoning, and I hope it helps.